My monster-in-law wore white to my wedding. Not ivory, not cream pure, bridal white. She walked into my reception like she was the bride, and everyone's jaw hit the floor. But I didn't freak out. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront her. Because I'd been planning for this moment for 2 solid years. And that woman had no idea what was coming. My name's Rachel, and this is the story of how I destroyed my mother-in-law's reputation with a single wedding speech. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started the day I met Linda Morrison for the first time. Jake and I had been dating for 6 months when he finally suggested I meet his mom. He'd been weirdly hesitant about it, always making excuses about her being busy or traveling or not feeling well. Red flag number 1 that I completely ignored because I was head over heels in love with this man. We drove to her house on a Sunday afternoon, and Jake seemed nervous the entire ride, which should have been red flag number 2. Linda answered the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was in her late 50s, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, expensive jewelry, and the kind of outfit that screamed, "I have money and I want you to know it." She looked me up and down like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "So you're Rachel," she said, not moving to let us in. "Jake. Darling. You didn't tell me she was so tall." "I'm 5'9". It's not that tall, but the way she said it made it sound like a disease. The afternoon got worse from there. Every single thing about me was wrong in Linda's eyes. My job as a graphic designer wasn't prestigious enough. My college wasn't impressive enough. My family wasn't wealthy enough. She asked about my parents' professions with this condescending smile. And when I said my dad was a mechanic and my mom was a teacher, she actually said, "Oh, how modest." Jake tried to defend me a few times, but Linda would just pat his hand and change the subject like he hadn't spoken. She showed me pictures of Jake's ex-girlfriend, Amanda, who was apparently a lawyer from a wealthy family. "Such a lovely girl," Linda kept saying. We were all so surprised when they broke up. On the drive home, I was quiet, trying to process what had just happened. Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry about my mom. She's difficult with everyone." "Does she hate me?" "She doesn't hate you, she has very specific ideas about things. She'll warm up to you." She never warmed up to me. Not even a little bit. Over the next year and a half, as Jake and I got more serious, Linda's campaign against me intensified. She would call Jake constantly, always with some emergency that required his immediate attention. Car trouble, plumbing issues, technology problems, all things that mysteriously happened whenever Jake and I had plans. He'd rush over to help her, and I'd be left waiting at restaurants or movie theaters, feeling like an idiot. She forgot to invite me to family gatherings. Jake's sister's birthday party. Linda said she thought Jake would bring Amanda, so there wasn't enough food for me. Thanksgiving? She told Jake it was family only, apparently forgetting that his sister's boyfriend was there. Christmas? She scheduled it for a day I'd already told her I had to work. When Jake finally proposed, beautiful moment on a beach at sunset. I was so happy I cried. Linda's reaction was to call him that night and sob about how he was abandoning her. I could hear her wailing through the phone from across the room. "How could you do this to me? After everything I've sacrificed for you?" Jake tried to reassure her, but she kept crying and saying she wasn't ready to lose her son. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted. "She'll come around," he promised. "She just needs time to adjust." The wedding planning was a special kind of hell. Linda inserted herself into every single decision, but only to criticize and undermine. She hated my dress, a bit revealing for a woman your age, don't you think? I was 28. She hated the venue, so common, everyone has their wedding there. She hated the colors, blue and silver. How cold and uninviting. She pushed hard for us to invite Amanda to the wedding. "She's practically family." Linda insisted. It would be rude not to invite her. When I firmly said no, Linda pouted for weeks and told everyone I was being petty and jealous. The breaking point almost came during the bridal shower. My mom and sister had planned this beautiful event at a nice restaurant, invited all my friends and female family members. Linda showed up an hour late, complained about the food, and then gave a speech about how she hoped I would be the kind of wife Jake deserves, and learn to put his needs first. She ended it by saying she'd pray for patience for both of us. My maid of honor, Sarah, pulled me aside after. "Rachel, that woman is a monster. How are you dealing with this?" "I'm marrying Jake, not his mother," I said. But even I didn't believe it anymore. Linda was everywhere, poisoning everything. The week before the wedding, things escalated. Linda called me directly. She usually only communicated through Jake and told me she needed to talk. We met at a coffee shop, and she slid a piece of paper across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "A prenuptial agreement. I had my lawyer draw it up. It's very fair, but it protects Jake's assets and his inheritance. I'm sure you understand." I stared at her. "Jake and I have already discussed this. We're not doing a prenup. Rachel, dear. You need to be realistic. You don't come from money. Jake does. This is just practical. Did Jake ask you to give this to me?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Jake is too sweet to have these hard conversations. That's what mothers are for." I left the prenup on the table and walked out. When I told Jake about it that night, he was furious at his mother. For once, he called her and told her to stay out of our financial decisions. Linda cried and said she was just trying to protect him from a gold digger. That's when Jake finally seemed to see what I'd been dealing with. "I'm so sorry," he said, holding me while I cried angry tears. "I didn't realize it was this bad. After the wedding, we're setting serious boundaries. I promise." But we still had to get through the wedding. The morning of the wedding, I was getting ready with my bridesmaids when my phone started blowing up. Jake was calling. His sister was calling. Even his dad was calling. I ignored them all. I was determined to enjoy getting ready, to soak in this moment with my girls. Finally, Sarah answered her phone and her face went pale. "Rachel, Linda's dress for the wedding. Did you know what she was wearing?" "No, why? Is it inappropriate?" Sarah showed me a photo that Jake's sister had just sent. Linda, in full hair and makeup, wearing a white dress. Not off-white, not champagne, not cream. White. Wedding dress white. Floor length, elegant, expensive looking, with a beaded bodice that caught the light. She looked like a bride. If you've ever had a mother-in-law or future-in-law who tried to sabotage your wedding, drop a comment about what they did. I need to know I'm not the only one who dealt with this level of crazy. I stared at the photo, feeling rage bubble up inside me. This was it. This was her final move to ruin my day, to make sure all eyes were on her instead of me. I thought about calling her, screaming at her, demanding she change. My hands were shaking as I held the phone. "Rachel," Sarah said carefully, "what do you want to do?" I took a deep breath, and suddenly, something clicked in my brain. Clarity washed over me. "Nothing," I said. "Nothing?" She wants a reaction. She wants drama. She wants me to call her crying or show up at her house or cause a scene. She wants to be the victim. And she wants to ruin my day with conflict. I looked at my bridesmaids, who were all staring at me with worried faces. We're not giving her that satisfaction. I'm going to get married. I'm going to look beautiful. And we're going to let Linda show everyone exactly who she really is. "But Rachel, she's wearing white to your wedding," my sister said. "I know. And every single person there is going to judge her for it. We don't have to say a word. She's going to humiliate herself." A plan was already forming in my mind, getting clearer by the second. In fact, I'm counting on it. The ceremony was beautiful. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, and Jake's face when he saw me made everything worth it. For those moments, standing at the altar, saying our vows, kissing as husband and wife, Linda didn't matter. This was about us. But I couldn't help noticing the whispers as we walked back down the aisle together. People pointing at Linda, sitting in the front row in her white dress, looking smug. I saw my aunts shaking their heads, saw Jake's relatives looking uncomfortable, saw strangers in the pews raising their eyebrows. At the reception, Linda made her grand entrance, posing for photos like she was the guest of honor. She'd even gotten a corsage that matched mine. Jake saw her, and his face went dark with anger. But I squeezed his hand. "Not yet," I whispered. "Trust me." Dinner service began, and Linda made sure she was the center of attention at her table, laughing loudly, calling people over, making sure everyone saw her dress. Some of Jake's relatives looked mortified. His Aunt Margaret kept apologizing to me with her eyes every time I looked over. Then came the toasts. My dad spoke first, giving a sweet speech about watching me grow up and welcoming Jake to the family. Jake's dad spoke next, clearly uncomfortable, giving a generic but nice speech about marriage and partnership. He very pointedly did not ask his wife to speak. Linda stood up anyway. "I know I wasn't on the program," she announced, grabbing a microphone from somewhere. "But a mother has some things she needs to say on her son's wedding day." Jake tensed beside me. but I put my hand on his arm. Let her talk, I whispered. Linda launched into a speech that started out sounding sweet but quickly revealed itself as a passive-aggressive nightmare. She talked about Jake's childhood, how close they were, how he always came to her with his problems. She mentioned Amanda 3 times, always with the phrase, Jake's first love. She talked about how hard it was to let go of her son, and how she hoped I understood what an adjustment this was for her. Then she started giving me advice. Marriage is about sacrifice, Rachel. It's about putting your husband's needs first, about understanding that he comes from a very different background than you do. I hope you're ready for that challenge. The room was getting uncomfortable. People were shifting in their seats, and I could see several relatives actively glaring at Linda. But she kept going, building to what she clearly thought was going to be a heartfelt moment. I just want to say that I'm here for you both, whenever you need me. Day or night, Jake, you can always call your mother. Some things never change. And a boy's bond with his mother is. That's when she stumbled. Linda had been gesturing dramatically with one hand while holding a glass of red wine in the other, and in her enthusiasm, she lost her balance in her heels. The wine glass flew out of her hand and splattered all over the front of her white dress. The entire reception gasped. Red wine, dark and spreading, all over that white dress she'd worn to steal my spotlight. Linda shrieked, looking down at herself in horror. I almost lost it right there. If you would have thrown your own wine at her, hit that like button. But I had a better plan. I stood up, grabbed some napkins, and walked over to Linda with the most concerned expression I could manage. Oh, Linda, are you okay? Here, let me help. I dabbed at the wine stain, making it worse if anything, while Linda sputtered. It's ruined. My dress is ruined. I know. I'm so sorry, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Why don't you go to the bridal suite? I'm sure we can find something there to help. I turned to one of the bridesmaids. Sarah, can you take Linda to get cleaned up? As soon as Linda was escorted out, I walked back to my seat and picked up my own microphone. The room was completely silent, everyone watching. Well, I said with a small laugh, I think we all need a moment after that. Linda is okay, just a little wine mishap. But actually, while I have everyone's attention, I'd like to say a few words myself. Jake looked at me, clearly wondering what I was about to do. I gave him a reassuring smile and stood up, facing our guests. First of all, thank you all so much for being here today. Jake and I are so grateful to be surrounded by people who love and support us. I paused, making eye contact with key people around the room. When you get married, you're not just marrying a person, you're joining a family. And family dynamics can be complicated. A few knowing chuckles from the crowd. I want to tell you all a story about love and boundaries. When Jake and I first started dating, I was so excited to meet his family. I wanted them to love me, to accept me, to see why Jake and I are so good together. But I learned pretty quickly that acceptance isn't always immediate. And sometimes it doesn't come at all. Jake reached up and squeezed my hand. I could see his dad looking uncomfortable, but I pressed on. Over the past 2 years, I've experienced some challenges with a particular family member. I've been excluded from gatherings, criticized for my background, compared unfavorably to Jake's ex-girlfriend, and told in numerous ways that I'm not good enough. I've watched Jake be manipulated with fake emergencies and guilt trips. I've been told I'm a gold digger and presented with prenups that neither Jake nor I wanted. And today, on what's supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I watched someone try to steal the spotlight by wearing a white dress to my wedding. The room was dead silent now. You could hear a pin drop. But here's the thing I want everyone to understand. That behavior? That's not about me. It's not about Jake. It's about someone who is so insecure, so controlling, and so desperate for attention that she will sabotage her own son's happiness to maintain control. And I'm done pretending that's normal. I'm done making excuses for it. And I'm done letting it affect my marriage before it's even a day old. I looked directly at Jake's dad, who was staring at his lap. To everyone here who has enabled this behavior, who has made excuses for it, who has told Jake to just ignore it or told me to be patient, you're part of the problem. You've allowed one person's toxicity to poison family gatherings, ruin celebrations, and hurt people you claim to love. And that ends today. Jake stood up beside me, putting his arm around my waist. He took the microphone. Rachel's right. My mother's behavior has been unacceptable, and I should have stood up to it sooner. I'm sorry to everyone who's been uncomfortable or hurt by it. And I'm especially sorry to my wife. He emphasized the word, squeezing me tighter, for not protecting her from this toxicity sooner. He looked around the room. From this day forward, Rachel and I are setting clear boundaries. We will not accept manipulation. We will not accept criticism disguised as concern. We will not accept attempts to undermine our relationship. And we will not accept anyone who treats my wife with anything less than respect. Jake's Aunt Margaret started clapping. Then his uncle. Then my family joined in. And within seconds, the entire reception was applauding. Not for Linda's toast, but for us standing up to her. That's when Linda emerged from the bridal suite, still in her wine-stained white dress, and saw the scene. Everyone clapping, us standing together at the head table. United. Her face went through several emotions: confusion, realization, fury. "What is going on here?" she demanded. Jake's dad finally stood up. For the first time in probably years, he spoke directly to his wife in front of everyone. "Linda, sit down. We need to talk about your behavior." "My behavior?" "After the speech I just gave." "Your speech was inappropriate," Jake's dad said firmly. "Your dress is inappropriate. Your treatment of Rachel has been inappropriate for 2 years, and I'm done being silent about it." Linda looked around the room, clearly expecting someone to defend her, to take her side. No one did. Jake's sister looked away. His cousins stayed quiet. Even the relatives who usually enabled her remained silent. "You're all turning on me." Linda's voice was getting shrill. "On Jake's wedding day, you're all ganging up on his mother. You wore white to your son's wedding." Jake's Aunt Margaret said flatly. "What did you expect?" That's when reality seemed to hit Linda. She looked at her dress, at the red wine stain, at the room full of people staring at her with judgment in their eyes. I was trying to look nice. A mother should look nice at her son's wedding. In white, my mom spoke up for the first time, her voice ice cold. "You wore white to another woman's wedding. That's not trying to look nice. That's trying to be the bride." Linda's face crumpled. She looked at Jake, her last hope. "Jakey, sweetheart, tell them I wasn't trying to." "Mom, you need to leave," Jake said quietly. "What?" "You need to leave the reception. You've done enough damage. Rachel and I don't want you here anymore. You can't be serious. I'm your mother, and she's my wife, and you've disrespected her for the last time." Jake's voice was steady but hard. "Dad, can you take Mom home?" Jake's dad stood up immediately, looking almost relieved. "Yes. Come on, Linda. Let's go." "I'm not leaving. This is my son's wedding." But Jake's dad took her arm, and with help from Jake's uncle, they escorted her out. She protested the whole way, her voice getting more desperate, her white wine-stained dress visible to everyone as she was led through the reception hall and out the door. The moment she was gone, the entire atmosphere changed. It was like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. People started breathing normally again, talking, laughing. The DJ, reading the room perfectly, started playing upbeat music. If you're loving this story of standing up to a toxic mother-in-law, make sure you're subscribed to Karma's Echo. Hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss the next story about what happened after the wedding. Jake and I stood there, holding each other, as our guests came up one by one to hug us and apologize. His Aunt Margaret was crying. "I should have said something years ago. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that alone." His sister hugged me tight. "Welcome to the family. The real family, not whatever Mom was trying to create." Even relatives I'd never met came up to tell me they'd witnessed Linda's behavior at other family events and were glad someone finally called it out. The rest of the reception was perfect. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated. Without Linda's dark cloud hanging over everything, people could actually enjoy themselves. Jake's dad came back after an hour, looking exhausted but lighter somehow. He apologized to me privately, said he'd been enabling Linda for years and it was time for that to stop. The weeks after the wedding were interesting. Linda tried to reach out to Jake repeatedly, but he held firm on our boundaries. No contact until she acknowledged her behavior and apologized. She refused, instead playing the victim to anyone who would listen. But something had changed. People weren't listening anymore. Jake's Aunt Margaret hosted a family dinner and specifically didn't invite Linda. When Linda found out and demanded to know why, Margaret told her simply, "Because you haven't apologized for your behavior at the wedding. And none of us want to deal with your drama right now." Linda tried to rally support from other family members, but the video of my speech had been shared by several guests. Everyone had seen it, Everyone knew exactly what had happened. And one by one, family members started setting their own boundaries with Linda. His sister stopped answering Linda's calls when they were just complaints about me. His cousins declined invitations to Linda's house. His dad started spending more time with us and less time catering to Linda's demands. Even Linda's own sister, Jake's Aunt Dorothy, called her out at a family gathering. "Linda, you brought this on yourself," Dorothy said. "You wore white to your son's wedding. You gave a passive-aggressive speech. You've been terrible to Rachel for 2 years. What did you think would happen? That everyone would just keep pretending it was okay?" 6 months after the wedding, Jake's parents separated. His dad moved into an apartment and started divorce proceedings. He told Jake that the wedding had been a wake-up call. He'd spent 30 years walking on eggshells around Linda's narcissism, and watching her try to destroy Jake's happiness had been the final straw. "I should have protected you better when you were growing up," he told Jake over dinner one night. "I let her control everything because it was easier than fighting. I'm sorry." Linda spiraled. Without her family to control and manipulate, without Jake jumping at her every call, she floundered. She tried to paint herself as the victim, posting on Facebook about being abandoned by her family. But too many people had witnessed her behavior, and the comments on her posts were not sympathetic. A year after our wedding, Linda finally reached out to Jake, with what seemed like a genuine apology. She acknowledged some of her behavior, not all, but some, and asked if she could see him. Jake agreed to meet her for coffee, but insisted I didn't have to come if I didn't want to. I went anyway. I wanted to hear what she had to say. Linda looked different, smaller somehow, less confident. The separation had been hard on her, and you could see it. When she saw me, she actually flinched. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. We talked for an hour. Linda apologized for the white dress, calling it a mistake in judgment. She apologized for some of the things she'd said, though she tried to frame them as misunderstandings. She asked if we could start fresh. Jake looked at me, letting me make the call. I thought about it carefully. "Linda, I appreciate the apology," I said. "But starting fresh means respecting boundaries. It means treating me as Jake's partner, not as competition. It means no more manipulation, no more guilt trips, no more comparing me to Amanda or anyone else. Can you do that?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. She wasn't really sorry. She was lonely and wanted her son back, but she hadn't fundamentally changed. "I'll try," she said finally. "Trying isn't enough," Jake said. "Either you can respect our boundaries, or you can't. There's no try." Linda's face hardened slightly, and I saw a flash of the old Linda. "I'm doing my best. If that's not good enough for you." "It's not," Jake interrupted. "Mom, when you're actually ready to change, not just to make nice so you can have access to us again, we'll talk. Until then, we need space." We left Linda at that coffee shop, and I felt lighter than I had in years. We'd stood our ground, we'd protected our marriage, and we'd refused to let her toxicity back into our lives. 2 years later, Jake and I are stronger than ever. His dad is thriving, dating someone kind and normal who treats everyone with respect. The family has healed in a lot of ways, with people feeling free to actually enjoy gatherings without walking on eggshells. Linda occasionally reaches out, but it's always on her terms, always with strings attached, and we've stopped responding. Looking back on that day, on the white dress and the wine spill and the speech that changed everything, I don't regret a single word. Some people called me harsh. Some said I should have been more forgiving, more understanding of Linda's protective instincts. But here's what I learned. You can't love toxic people into changing. You can't sacrifice your happiness to make manipulative people comfortable. And you absolutely cannot let someone disrespect you over and over while you smile and take it just to keep the peace. That speech at my wedding wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about refusing to participate in the fiction that Linda's behavior was acceptable. It was about protecting my marriage before it even began. And it was about showing Jake that I would stand up for us, even when it was hard. The wine-stained white dress became legendary in Jake's family. It's brought up at every gathering as a reminder of what happens when you push people too far. Linda wanted to make a statement with that dress, and she did, just not the one she intended. She wanted everyone to see her as the most important woman in Jake's life. Instead, everyone saw her as someone so narcissistic she couldn't let her son have his own day. She wanted sympathy and attention. Instead, she got judgment and consequences. And me? I got to marry the love of my life, surrounded by people who truly supported us. I got to set boundaries that protected our relationship. And I got to show everyone, including myself, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable toxic behavior. My name is Rachel Morrison. And I'm the woman who gave a wedding speech that ostracized her mother-in-law. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because some relationships are worth fighting for, and some boundaries are worth defending, and sometimes standing up for yourself is the most important thing you can do. Justice, it turns out, looks like a woman in a wine-stained white dress being escorted out of a wedding she tried to ruin. And honestly, that image will never get old.